Hey there, my name's Chad, and let me start this off by giving this review some context. I'm not really an MCU fan. I mean, I've seen some of the films, I've watched about half of them. I saw nearly all of the early ones. I think I saw all of the early ones up to the first Avengers movie. I've also seen both the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which I didn't know was part of the MCU until I saw this. And I caught part of the third Thor movie. While having dinner at my sister's house, I wasn't really paying that much attention to it. I think I was messing around on my phone, and I wasn't really aware there was any kind of overarching plot to these films other than, here's the Avengers origin story, and here's a movie where they all work together. And I mean, although I read Marvel Comics as a kid, I pretty much stuck to Spider-Man and X-Men. I mean, they had the cartoon shows, so I had heard of them. And I mean, there was a clone saga going on in Spider-Man at the time, so that was hard enough to keep track of without, knowing about all these other various heroes that are there. I think I had one Iron Man and one Captain America comic each. So I didn't know all that much about the characters. My hometown didn't really have a dedicated comic shop, so you got what you could get at the used bookstore or the grocery store. So, now that Endgame is like the most popular movie on the planet, I think it beat like Titanic's record or something, I don't know. I felt like I didn't want to be the one guy on Earth that hadn't seen the film. I asked around a bit and everybody was giving me the answer that, oh, you need to see all the movies, or you need to watch most of the movies. They had like a viewing list, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go in and whatever I know, I hope I know. I mean, the only preparation I did, I watched half of Captain America: The Winter Soldier the night before I went in to see Endgame. So I was pretty much more or less blind, and so I'm here now with my outsider's opinion on the movie, something I don't think you're going to get from a lot of people. So let's start with the knowledge I went in with. I'm doing this in one take, so bear with me. The very basics of what I know about the Avengers characters, which I wrote down before I went in. I'm almost certainly going to get something wrong, if not everything wrong, so bear with me and correct me in the comments as needed. Let's start with Captain America. He is a World War II super commando enhanced by a special drug. His superpower is steroids. Iron Man is a rich genius inventor man with all kinds of gadgets in a power armor suit, and whose parents were not murdered in an alley, as far as I know. So his superpower is money. Then there's the Hulk. He's a shrimpy, nerdy guy that turns into a giant green monster man when he gets mad. His superpower is manlet rage. Then there's Green Arrow, I think. I don't know. Part of me wants to say Green Arrow is a DC character, but I don't really keep track of every company's B-list characters. I don't know these things. Anyway, his superpower is archery. And then there's Thor. He possesses a hammer and electrical powers, and I believe he's the Norse god of general contractors. Then you have Scarlett Johansson, whose character is a super spy in a cat suit. I don't think she has any superpowers. It's never really explained. She's just there. I think she's basically Eva from Metal Gear Solid 3, but without the cool Mauser. So, for lack of knowledge, I have to refer to her as Scarlett Johansson since I don't know her name. Finally, I think the Human Torch was an Avenger. I think I was mistaken on this because I was confused by two factors. Number one, the guy that plays Human Torch in the Fantastic Four movies plays Captain America, and also the only issue of an Avengers comic I ever owned had the Human Torch on the cover. So after viewing this film, I feel it's not necessary to have seen every single Marvel film to understand what's going on in Endgame. The plot is pretty easy to follow. I've heard from a lot of people that you'll be lost if you don't at least see Infinity War first, but within I'd say 20 minutes of the movie starting, they all but spoon-feed you the most important details I think you probably need to know to have a baseline of what's going on. So since the main plot didn't really confuse me, let's go through the things that did confuse me or I thought were worthy of noting, before I'll move on to what I liked and what I disliked or something. So, I don't know what's a spoiler and what's not, so consider yourself warned. Here are my notes on the film, basically. I think the only time I was truly baffled was right at the beginning, when Green Arrow's family is apparently taken away by the Rapture. I wasn't sure if I hadn't accidentally walked into a film adaptation of the Left Behind books, which sucked, but I read one of them once. Then we shift over to the Guardians of the Galaxy ship. Since I didn't know the movies were connected, I was pretty shocked, and Iron Man is hanging out with Nebula, so... And he looks like he's anorexic or something now, so... Or he's sick, I don't know, he's very skinny. He could use a good steak or some fried chicken. And then you have some blonde lady coming out of nowhere, and she can breathe in space without a helmet, which is, I guess, confusing. I think she's a Green Lantern or something, but the colors are Superman's, but that's DC, I think. So I really don't know what's going on now. So then they go back to Earth, and the Avengers that I know are mostly there. I know these people. And Nick Fury is alive now, and I think he died in Winter Soldier, so I'm not sure what's happening. And then the Avengers fly through space and meet a guy that looks like Grimace from McDonald's if he got totally shredded. So I think I'm going to call him Jimus from now on. You like that, Jimus? But apparently Jimus is the villain from the last movie, Thanos. And then Thor cuts the guy's head off, so, I mean, shouldn't this have been in the last movie where you killed the villain or something? Anyway, so now we cut to 5 years later. It's post-apocalyptic in a sense, because, I mean, half the world has been wiped out. But I like that the world doesn't, like, completely fall apart like in Mad Max or Fallout. It's really refreshing to see a post-apocalyptic society that's just trying to keep on with what they had before. And then Paul Rudd teleports in from nowhere. He's like a fish out of water character, and he asks a lot of questions about what is going on. So throughout the movie, he's ridiculed for having perfectly understandable responses that someone in his situation might have. And he's a good audience surrogate for people like me that don't know what the hell is going on and the way they get treated by MCU fans when they ask a question. I think he's the character I most relate with. Then you get a bunch of people communicating by hologram like it's the Star Wars, except even Green Lantern Lady isn't concerned about the droid attack on the Wookiees. And then Paul Rudd mentions quantum physics, and I'm like, oh no, this is where the bad episodes of Star Trek all start, because someone's going to bring up quantum physics, and it really just means the writers are going to start pulling things out of their ass. But then Paul Rudd starts going full Jeff Goldblum while he's explaining it, and I really like that. And I'm like, and then I notice everyone has an Audi, and it's like, are they the only car company that survived the apocalypse? I mean, Iron Man has an Audi. The other Avengers have an Audi. I know it's product placement, but it's so blatant that it seems like it's like they're the only operating car company left. So then they keep talking about these stones. So I'm like, the Rolling Stones? Did they get raptured too? Holy plot twist, Iron Man. And then we see the Hulk, which I mean, I've described two other characters as Green Arrow and Green Lantern, but only the Hulk is actually green. And he looks like iDubbbz if he started mainlining protein powder in GAC. So then Iron Man gets all maudlin, and I guess he keeps thinking about a son he had that I guess died when Thanos nuked everybody. And I also have to notice this is like the 1 hour mark now, and for a superhero action movie they have like had one fight so far. So they build a time machine device, and they're sending Ant-Man, Paul Rudd's character through. I think he's a scientist of some kind, and I'm thinking, Why are you testing it with him? Why aren't you testing it with someone that, someone that's kind of expendable, that's not a team member? But I don't know, I guess then we'd have to care about whatever transporter accident happens. It would be really catastrophic if the guy that developed your plan teleported like into a wall or in the ocean. And then we meet Thor, and Thor is fat now but still has bigger arms than me, despite him doing nothing for 5 years but, abusing alcohol and playing video games, which I gotta tell you will not get you ripped. I've tried. That doesn't work. And then we cut to Green Arrow murdering people. I guess Marvel thinks their family film about superheroes needs to let me hear a Japanese crime lord choking to death on his own blood. I guess you gotta compete for that edgy Game of Thrones dollar now. Then Paul Rudd gets made fun of for asking what an Infinity Stone is. I mean, I have the same question. It's explained later, but you don't have to be a jerk to the guy. I mean, just have him watch a few episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and it's like, we gotta save Krillin. He got put through a wall and died. And for some reason, Thor is like acting like Captain Jack Sparrow or something, which I find really odd, and I don't get it at all. And then I'm not going to suggest they stole their time suit designs from Mass Effect, but I could. And now we enter stock footage from Avengers 1. Oh, great. And then there's some bald Buddhist monk lady. Maybe she's a Shaolin monk. She's going to do some kung fu. And she has one of the Infinity Stones for some reason. And then someone says, "You're a long way from Budapest." What the hell does that mean? There was a joke on an episode of Rugrats I saw when I was a kid where Grandpa Phil says to Grandpa Boris, "Where'd you learn those rules, Budapest?" What happens in Budapest? What do you have against Hungary, Hollywood? Didn't you do enough to Bela Lugosi? I don't know if anyone remembers the Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego game show, but this plot is starting to remind me of it. This sure could use like an a cappella group acting as a Greek chorus for those of us that are just joining. So like, I didn't follow Avengers comics. I don't know much about them. Is this from the comics? Is this like, because it feels like it's kind of ripping off Dragon Ball and the way the stones are, they kind of remind me of materia from Final Fantasy VII. I mean, this probably predates that by like 30 years, and I look like an idiot now. So, I see Thanos and the Trade Federation get their ships from the same place, and his army is the Zerg. And this is where the big Lord of the Rings battle every movie until the end of time now is contractually obligated to have now begins. And the tactics, of course, are run straight at each other and punch each other. We're not going to flank or anything, we're just going to punch each other. And I guess the way you can really tell I've been absent from this series for several movies is that I can't tell who the extras are and who the heroes are. And then there are people teleporting in from nowhere, and hey, Guardians of the Galaxy, I know them, and wait a second, Spider-Man? Why is he in this? And why isn't he played by Tobey Maguire? And wait, he's the guy that Tony Stark is mourning? Is Spider-Man Iron Man's son in this? Oh crap, I'm confused. And then Lady shows up, and Thanos says, "I don't even know who you are." I mean, I'm in pretty much the same boat. I don't know who she is. This probably means something to somebody, but it's lost on me, and this dramatic moment becomes pretty awkward. Pretty much the same moment as in Street Fighter the movie when Chun-Li confronts M. Bison, only she actually describes why she's there. And Bison says, "The day that Bison came to your village was the most important day of your life, but for me, it was Tuesday." It had a little more impact, and I guess it's like, this is probably a big dramatic moment for people that have been following the series, and I'm like, what the hell? Who is this lady? I don't know. I don't know these things. And then the bad guys all fade to dust like in a hammered Dracula picture, and that pretty much concludes the notes I took on the film. So, on to the, I guess, review portion. My voice is failing me. I feel like I've been yelling for an hour, but, I mean, I've been doing this for like 15 minutes. Sorry. Anyway, one of the problems faced with comic books themselves is the continuity lockout. I definitely had that problem trying to get into comics as a kid when I basically, could only buy used comics at a local bookstore, and graphic novels were still like a pretty new thing, and I didn't know about them. So in my case, my problem wasn't that I couldn't follow the plot, it's that I didn't really care that much about the characters. I didn't know, what their plight was. So the movie doesn't begin with any stakes for, me, average Joe normie, coming in off the street. Everyone that's gonna die is already dead. I mean, what more can you do to them? You can't kill someone twice. So if they succeed in unkilling the people they lost, great. If they don't succeed and aren't really any worse off than they are at the start of the story, the whole movie is the quest to switch from Wayne's World's Scooby-Doo ending to the mega happy ending. It's like, what movie am I thinking of? Crap, forget that. Anyway, I'm like, stakes can be pretty important in an action-adventure movie. Stakes kind of mean the heroes have something at risk. I mean, here they have something to gain, but until they start tracking down the Infinity Stones during the second act, and Thanos discovers they're hunting the stones, they don't really have much to lose. If it fails, they're in pretty much the same place they were before. I mean, I understand that the whole movie is basically about fan service and treating the loyal customers that have been there for every movie to, this kind of payoff that we've seen before of things they've seen before at the cost of anybody walking in expecting a coherent action movie being at a loss for why they should care about what's going on. Which, I mean, is kind of a weird problem because, I mean, generally I want a movie to stand on its own, and I don't feel like it should be necessary to check out a bunch of supplemental material to understand the basics of a film. This is something that started happening in Star Wars during the prequels that kind of started to piss me off, like when what is it? General Grievous shows up in Episode 3, and you're like, everyone acts like they've already met him before, and we're supposed to know who he is. And it's like, who the hell is this guy? Because we don't know. And, it's like, oh, you have to watch, this Clone Wars miniseries cartoon to understand who General Grievous is and why he's such a threat. And I've never liked that, and it's become a thing in like the past 15, 20 years where supplemental material is important to understand a movie. But I mean, it kind of leaves me in an impasse because the movie was never designed to work on its own. I mean, it was never made to be its own movie. It's, it's like the final episode of a series, and it's kind of weird. I can't give a fair opinion on it because I haven't seen the other films, and to be honest, this doesn't really make me want to see them. But I guess now I might have to, so I can kind of contextualize this. Anyway, folks, I've held on to your attention long enough, if I have managed to hold on to your attention. I've mostly just been rambling, but I look forward to knowing why I'm wrong. Please leave me a comment. Good night.